All right, this video is going to go over the rectangular coordinate system, how we graph equations, and just some different characteristics of graphs. So the plotting ordered pairs piece of this is that we are in what's called the Cartesian coordinate system. There are two axes here, the x-axis and the y-axis. Because there are two axes, x and y, that means we divide this space into 4 quadrants. The place where both x and y are positive, we call that quadrant 1. And then we number these in a counterclockwise motion. So this is 2, 3, and 4. Each point is going to be defined on this coordinate system by its x and its y. So its x is going to tell you its horizontal direction, and then its y point is going to tell you its vertical direction. You're going to write those as an ordered pair. Like in this example here, if you wanted to make the point 3, -1, that means that x equals 3, y equals -1, and we write that in the ordered pair, 3, -1. It does get confusing because it can look like interval notation. So it's important that you understand that this is a point. And then you go on your x-axis over 3. You go on your y-axis down 1. And then you just draw in your point there. Let's look at a couple more points. So if I want to graph the point -2, 4, then that means x equals -2 and y equals 4. If I want to plot the point 3, 3, that means x equals 3 and y equals 3. If I want to plot the point 0, -3, then I would not move on my x-axis and I would just move down 3. Now we can use these points to try to graph equations and try to find patterns and relationships. In order to graph equations, we do need these equations to be in 2 variables, like in this example here. And we are going to plot these points by creating a table of values and then seeing if there is a pattern that is generated on the graph. So let's plug in -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 in for my x. Y is then equal to -4 minus 1, -5. So this point is going to be at -2, -5. I'm going to plug in -1 for x. -2 minus 1 gives me -3. So this is at the point -1, -3. When I plug in 0, I get 0 minus 1, -1. When I plug in 1, 2 minus 1 gives me 1, so 1, 1. And when I plug in 2, I get 4 minus 1, which is 3. And I plot that point there. Now, if you notice, each time my x increases by 1, my y increases by 2. There's a pattern here. And so I can connect those dots because I can see that there is a pattern in which to connect them. We'll talk more about that type of equation later on in this chapter. The other way that you can graph, other than plotting points, is by finding the x and y intercepts. The x-intercept is the point in which the graph crosses the x-axis. Well, if we cross the x-axis, then that means I'm going to set y equal to 0. So you can see in this equation here, I let y be equal to 0. I add 1, divide by 3, and so this must be my x-intercept at 1/3, 0. If I want to look at a y-intercept, that's where the graph crosses the y-axis. And so I'm going to let x be equal to 0. This is very similar to what I just did above. Here I'm going to let x be equal to 0, and I find that my y-intercept is 0, -1. You can then plot this on the graph by just plotting 2 points. 2 points is all you need to make a line, like so. Let's look at another example together. So the first thing I want to find is my x-intercept. That's when y is equal to 0. So I plug in 0 for y, add 4, and divide by -3. So I have an x-intercept of -4/3, comma 0, or something a little bigger than -1 at -4/3. Then I want to find my y-intercept. That's going to be when x is equal to 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and simplify. So that's the point 0, comma -4. I plot, and then since I have 2 points, I can make the equation graph, which would be a line in this case.